Welcome to part 11 of the Convergence. All things are converging.
Of residents and visitors that are flocking to the DKI and the eruption site to view this current Mauna Loa eruption. It's creating a safety hazard.
Although the flow is slow moving, it's still persistent and emergency.
Was that brimstone and fire, you think? Kind of makes you wonder if that's what hell is going to be like, don't it?
Managers are ramping up their planning as it threatens to cross over this same highway.
It's very high probability that this lava flow, if it continues, will definitely reach the road. So we're looking at about 2 days out.
But despite the risk Mauna Loa poses, it's a unique chance to see how nature creates new land.
It's still unclear how much longer this lava will continue to flow. Scientists say it could be a few days, even a few weeks.
He was still smiling about that, and it could be a few weeks. It could be a few weeks.
This world together for their evil purposes.
We begin in China, where the ruling Communist Party has eased up on its zero COVID policy after a string of protests sparked by outrage over strict lockdowns.
Even though the government has relaxed some restrictions, it's also using its surveillance technology to squash dissent. CBN's Brody Carter brings us the story.
While Beijing has relieved some of the pressure that's driving the nationwide protest movement in China, its surveillance state continues gathering information on those who stood up to the government's lockdowns. This week's protests are being called the biggest wave of civil disobedience since the 1989 Tiananmen protests. Wednesday, the government announced it's easing some COVID-19 restrictions where traffic and indoor dining resumed and shopping malls reopened. But during the protests, the surveillance state was keeping a close eye on potential dissidents.
The Chinese Communist Party is notorious for using technology to expedite its undermining of freedom and human rights in China.
The Chinese government seeks to identify the protesters even as video of the demonstrations spread throughout the country.
One particular application that would mark activities as suspicious that were as innocuous as exiting out your back door rather than your front door. Those types of suspicions could be grounds for being sent to these political re-education camps.
China's communist government has long prepared for protests by building up its security forces. Now that government is even stronger with the new power of its surveillance and censorship.
Re-education camps. You know what that means, right? That's those places where you're sent to and you get brutalized, and they try to teach you to think a different way. And if you don't comply with that, well, so in other words, if you're a Christian and they don't like your views, you're going to go to these re-education camps and you're going to come out without your religious views, because if you don't, well, you're likely not to come out. Right? Right. It's what the death panels are for, after all, right?
Technology. Gary, these protesters took a huge risk to publicly speak out. What does that say about the level of frustration that they have against China's government and its policy?
They are frustrated. Think about it. They've been shut down for about 3 years now in many places. People saying enough already. This is draconian. Imagine how it was in the United States. We were fed up, but things opened up and a lot of places didn't shut down. Many of these places have been shut down for a long time. and people are fed up with it. They're willing to take the risk because they want to get on with life.
You and I have reported extensively on China's very scary surveillance technology,
Yes.
and it really is a police state today. Are there other countries that are adopting this model of China's surveillance and using their technology against their people?
You know better than I do because you did a report on it last year. I think you said something.
Here, let me clue you in. They absolutely are starting to put up more cameras in the United States. And if you think they're not, you're nuts. Look around. There's even a little park which I go to occasionally. Never had cameras before, but I don't know, for some reason now, this little park now has surveillance cameras. Kind of awkward, right?
Like 72 countries are using the surveillance, and then also the places like Venezuela, Kenya, and then also in Cuba where they're using the censorship technology that you had mentioned. Over a year ago, they used it to crack down on protesters there. So yes, it's being used extensively. China is exporting its police state to other countries.
God is omnipotent. He is all powerful. God is omniscient. He is all knowing. God is omnipresent. He is present everywhere. Satan, in sharp contrast, does not reflect these divine attributes. Satan is very powerful, more than any man, and more powerful than most angels. Satan wants to be like God, and even exalts himself above God.
More powerful than most angels. No, let me point out that he is not. Michael casts him out of heaven. Michael and Michael's angel cast him and his angels out of heaven. So therefore, don't be thinking that you're not strong enough to cast out or to help cast him out, because you absolutely are. You absolutely are. Don't let Satan deceive you into thinking that you cannot be a part of that, and that you can't help get rid of Satan and his angels, because you absolutely can. Absolutely can. Too many people are believing in today's time that they have no power against the devil and his angels, but you absolutely do, as long as you are abiding in the Lord and not in sin, because the devil can't cast the devil out. So you can't be walking after the lusts of the flesh and expect to get rid of lust of the flesh. That will not work. In order to fulfill scriptures, there's going to have to be some people stepping forth and coming out of their sin. And certainly the signs are going to follow if you're doing this. Absolutely they are. The signs will follow. And, yeah. But let's get on some more footage.
Part of the beast system.
When you talk about places like Hong Kong, Turkey, are these places that have adopted this Chinese surveillance, how are they using it against believers and churches specifically?
I can tell you how they're using it against Christians in China. They monitor the government-controlled churches, of course, the 3 self-patriotic churches, to see who's going in and out, but especially those unregistered churches. They have millions of cameras around the country, and they're monitoring the movements. where you go, when you go, what you do, and they look for changes in behavior. If you normally don't go to that place, then and they're seeing a lot of people going to that place, then it's very suspicious, and then they'll send some police to investigate.
They're using facial recognition technology to identify all these people going into these houses of worship.
John 15:18 through 20. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you.
Last question, a few seconds here. Talk about the strict COVID policies and how are they impacting the churches in China today?
They target the churches. The first place they shut down is the church. And the Christians say, we know that we're being targeted. So imagine what they're going through. They can't worship together in their location. They go home, and it's dangerous online to worship. They have to talk in code on things like WeChat. But George, I'm mostly concerned right now at Christmas time for two pastors who are in prison that we need to pray for.
Yeah.
Pastor John Sao, and then also Wang Yi. Sao has his 5th Christmas in prison this year, and Wang Yi his 4th. We need to be praying for them.
Absolutely.
Sustenance, perseverance.
Yeah, and under a church that has experienced tremendous persecution, yet
It doesn't matter that it's Christmas. These people are in prison because of their beliefs. They need to be remembered in prayer regardless of what time of year it is. Do you think it's going to be a lot easier on them just because it's not Christmas after the paganism is past? No, it's not. Do you think they're going to miss their families less because the holidays have passed? No, they're not. Do you see what is coming to a soon-to-be police state near you? Is this really the kind of life you want to be living in for the rest of your life? Is this really how you want to live for another 20 to 40 years? I don't know about you, but it's not how I want to live. It absolutely is not how I want to live. The Lord is returning. And if you can't see that, the Lord is about to be revealed. In a way like He never has before. And if you can't see this coming, you are asleep. There is no oil in your lamp. You did not keep watch. Don't be expecting to get in when the bridegroom comes. You're not really looking for him. You don't even care if he comes or not. Let's be honest. No, you're just looking after yourself right now. You don't care what happens to him or what he's doing. You don't care about the Lord. You just want the rewards. How are you different from all those that persecuted him to begin with? All they wanted was his kingdom. They didn't care what happened to him. I will see you in the next part.